know we're all tired. It's okay. When the action plan ISP was first announced, I did some digging around to choose my topic. And ultimately, I found some troubling facts that made me decide to talk about kind of a touchy, very personal, and really pressing issue. Single mothers and poverty. As a child of a single mother, I was troubled when I found out that even nowadays in Canada, being the child of a lone parent, female family, makes you more likely to to struggle with drug addiction, mental health issues, drop out of high school, and go to prison. Being the child of a single mother makes you 5 times more likely to grow up in poverty. Unlike a few decades ago, being a single mother is no longer rare. Actually, 16% of Canadian families are of this composition. This represents almost 1 million kids in a country where the population isn't that high. What this means is that a significant portion of our youth is being undermined by these social barriers that make it harder for them to achieve their full potential. I think it's clear that there is a problem that needs to be addressed, and yet very little has been done. And yet, when faced with these stats about underachievement, we tend to point a finger at single mothers. We tend to put the blame on bad parenting. And yet, very little people actually know about this problem and how bad it is. I wasn't. And when I found out through research, it wasn't a pleasant surprise. I always thought of Canada as one of the countries where the standard of living is the highest, like way up there with Iceland or something. In fact, my parents were going to immigrate to Australia, and they had their papers almost ready, and their friends called them up and said, you know, Australia's not the place to go. Like, Canada is the place. People are the happiest, the healthiest, and they're basically like toddlers crawling in parks and stuff. So they went to Canada, and it is a great place to live. But unfortunately, our worldwide ranking is not as good as some of us would like to think. In the OECD, the Organization for Economical Cooperation and Development, that has 31 developed countries, Canada ranks 20th for poverty rate. And the poverty rate for single mothers is one of the worst. Single mothers have always been one of the groups that is the most vulnerable to poverty. It has, and even now, they still struggle. But why is that? Why single mothers, such a specific group of the population? Well, there are a lot of factors, but the one I'm going to focus about are income gap, the partners of single mothers, and the welfare system. So first, about the income gap. Even today, in 2015, a woman earns about 74 cents on average for every dollar that a man earns. And that is with the same education, the same work experience. That is not right. How can you expect someone to provide the same quality of life for their children when they put in the same amount of hours into the work, but they get less money from it? This explains why single fathers, who represent about 20% of single-parent families, do not have the same struggles with poverty. Of course, they still face the challenges of parenting alone, but their income on average is $81,000 compared to only $17,000 for single mothers. When you work full-time and take care of your children, you need affordable childcare. And unfortunately, it's not available everywhere in Canada. Actually, Ontario is one of the provinces where it's most expensive to send your child to daycare. Brampton, Ontario, a woman puts in more than a third of her salary into childcare. Okay, then there's the issue of partners. While the social stigma surrounding single mothers is has much improved, and it's not really such a taboo subject that you can't even discuss it openly. It is still harder for single mothers to find a partner with the same level of education. A study found that 60% of single mothers had a partner who is less educated than her, compared to only 30% for married mothers. When we know that education has a strong correlation with income, this means that a woman who already earns less than her male counterpart also has more trouble to find someone who earns as much as her. And I just want to add a note here that all of the data I'm using has been done on heterosexual families. I was not able to find data on more diverse families because the amount of study done on single mothers in poverty in Canada is so ridiculously small compared to the amount of people actually affected. So on top of this economical stress, which is added on to the stress of raising kids alone, some single mothers have to rely on welfare. But the way our welfare system is designed makes it that even if you only start relying on it as a temporary solution, often people are trapped into what is called commonly the welfare trap. Let me explain. In order to receive welfare, you have to be on a job hunt. But what if the jobs that you're qualified for are all minimum wage? Not to mention that welfare doesn't actually give you enough money to live above the poverty line. So you work at a minimum wage job, and this job does not provide you enough money to get out of welfare. Therefore, you're trapped in this cycle. And every cent that you earn is actually subtracted from your welfare check. For example, if you make $14,000 a year, then $7,000 will be subtracted from your welfare check. That is why people have so much trouble getting out of this situation. So you say, this sucks, I'm going to get a better education to find a higher paying job. So you decide to go to college, and perhaps you will take a student loan to pay for college, because college is expensive. And suddenly, either you are no longer eligible for welfare, or this money will be subtracted from your welfare check. So you take 1, 2, or even 3 additional minimum wage jobs to pay for your education and caring for children. Then on top of that, you have to take care of your kids and then find time to do your homework and keep your grades up so you can graduate. Some single mothers manage to do that, but it's not very realistic for most. So, where does this leave single mothers? The situation isn't good, but there are things that can be done about it. First of all, affordable childcare will solve so many issues. Then there's welfare and the gender income gap. I think that as young people who are either already able to vote or will be soon, we can all start by actually being aware of what the politicians' policies are concerning welfare and childcare. No matter what your political stance is, liberal or conservative or anything in between, I think that the priority is to have a healthy country with people who are out of poverty. And furthermore, it's not all about policy. It's also about understanding where people come from and being less judgmental and understand the struggles that each person faces. So yeah, thank you.